G'day viewers. The most commonly asked question I get on this channel is how do I use the train brake? I'm a locomotive person. I work on the footplate and I understand how all this stuff actually works, but I've learned it over many years of railway involvement. It's complex and it's really hard, and there are so many different systems and variations to learn. In this tutorial, I'm going to take a really simple approach that will be enough for you to get your wheels turning and drive trains in the simulator and be able to stop them again. In Train Sim World, train brakes fall into 5 major classes, and while there are others that look different, they're really the same under the covers. Let's ignore the locomotive brake, often known as the driver's brake or straight air brake for now, and we can cover dynamic and regenerative braking some other time. Let's keep this simple for now, because simple is going to be complex enough, and I don't want any. Manually lapping air brakes, like those that are found on the NJT, ALP46 and the SD40 locomotives. Automatic lapping air brakes, like those found on the ACS64 and the German BR101. Electro-pneumatic brakes like the Class 323 and the LIRR M7. Manually lapped vacuum brakes, e.g. the Class 101. And self-lapped vacuum brakes such as the Jubilee steam engine. Uh-oh, he let the complexity in. Let's just talk about braking in general and get it back to simple. Braking is used to slow or stop the train or maintain a given speed on a downhill gradient. The train brake acts on the entire train and applies braking force on usually every wheel of every connected vehicle. Again, let's keep going with the keep it simple version, and we'll pretend that the same force is applied at every wheel at the same time throughout the train. Let's also pretend that all this complexity doesn't matter, and that the brakes are either applied or released instantly. Let's also ignore that braking systems are generally backwards to what you think. In fact, let's ignore the laws of physics, and just talk about what is happening at the wheel in relation to what is happening at the brake handle in the cab. We can distill this down into 3 main positions of the brake handle. So let's talk about them and what they do in the locomotive and what they do in the train. And remember, we're keeping this super simple, so purists, frankly, bugger off. Alrighty, our 3 positions are release, which reduces the brake pressure, making the brakes let go of the wheel. Lap, which maintains the current brake pressure, and apply, which adds more brake pressure, making the brakes hug the wheel like that aunt or uncle you don't like who smells funny and crushes the life out of you. Why do some brakes have lap and others don't? Well, really they all do, but some of them have a clever little valve that replaces the lap handle position. Basically, these ones work by providing a range of braking from none to whoa, chuck out the anchors, mate. When the driver moves the handle and stops it at a given point, the clever valve changes the pressure being applied and then holds it until the driver moves the handle again, either to reduce or add more pressure. From our simple viewpoint, this is the same regardless of air brakes or vacuum brakes. These are the easiest brakes to use. For the others that don't do this, you're the clever little valve. So instead of providing a range, the release position takes away braking pressure, and the apply position adds it, and the lap position just holds onto it. The 3 positions can have lots of different names, and in real life, there are a lot of other handle positions. If you encounter them in game, don't worry too much about them at first. Running and release can be treated as the same most of the time. Apply, service, suppression, handle off, and emergency are all just variants of apply. Obviously there's a lot more to this topic, and when you're ready for the next steps, I have a bunch of tutorials on how the braking systems work on various trains in the game. Just have a look in my tutorials playlist that this tutorial's in. Alright then, let's go and look at a couple of trains, and let's try and follow the keep it simple method, and let's see how we go. Let's start off in the New Jersey Transit ALP46. Let's just hop in the cab. So if we have a look at the moment, we can look at our brake handle. It's the one with the red knob. So it's in this train called the automatic brake. Just out of interest, the brakes are never actually automatic, but you know. So we can see our three major positions there. We can see release at the bottom, lap in the middle, and if I just release this thing, you can see service, which is synonymous with apply. Don't worry about the other positions for now. Now, I released those brakes. Let's just have a look at what happened with our brake gauge. Now, the only one I care about for the purposes of this tutorial is this red needle here on the right-hand gauge. It's the one called brake cylinder. All right, now this is telling me what's happening to the brake cylinder on the locomotive. And we released it. You can see it's got 0 pounds of pressure. That means the brakes in the locomotive are actually off. And in this particular case, because we used the handle with the big red knob, we have turned off the brakes in the whole train, or released them. So if I go into the lap position now, nothing much happens, because remember, lap just holds your braking position. It doesn't increase it, and it doesn't decrease it. So if I go into the service position, or apply, and I go in there just for a tick, and out, back to lap, ignore the needle on the left-hand side, but what you can see is the brake pressure has gone up quite a bit on the cylinder. So we've now got 40 pounds in the cylinder. And if I go in there for a little bit more and come out again, we've now got even more. We've got 60 pounds in there. Probably can't get too much more in there. No, the simulation's going to let me. All right, we've now got 80 pounds in there. So that's a lot of stopping pressure. Now, if I go down to, and this doesn't apply to all trains, but it does on this one, if I go to release and then back to lap, I actually release some of the pressure out of the brake line. Just want to let you know that most trains don't really work this way. So if you kept doing this, you'd get yourself in trouble pretty quickly. But you can see that this has reduced the pressure. So let's take it out to release and take the brakes off. Now, there's another needle you can watch to give you a little bit more finesse here. And it's on trains that have an equalizing reservoir, it's the white needle here. So you notice that there was quite a delay between going into apply, or service, and something actually happening in the brake cylinder. So let's just go back to the lap position. And we're starting to move. We're rolling, but that's okay. We won't worry about that. Just watch the white needle in the equalizing. So I'm just gonna take out a little bit less than 10 pounds. See how we've got 20 pounds in the brake cylinder now, and we've stopped. So if I take out another 10 pounds, take it down to about 90. And now we've got a whole lot more pressure in the brake cylinder. Now there's some complex physics here, and there's some stuff going on, but you don't really need to worry about that stuff. So if you drop the equalizing a little bit, then the brake in the cylinder increases quite a lot. Now, why am I telling you to watch this needle going down and not watch this needle going up? Well, it's really simple. The equalizing needle reacts really quickly, and the brakes don't. The brakes take a little while because, face it, it's moving air around. So it does take a little while. Remember how I said we could pretend that it was all instant? You can. It'll do. It'll work. So if I want to stop this train and I'm moving like we just did, so let me release the brakes again. Because one of the common questions is, how do I just get enough pressure to slow me down? And to do that, we're going to need to drive. Now we're in Sunnyside Yard, heading for New York Penn. We're not going to get that far. But what I want to do is just get us moving. I'm ignoring the speed limits. In fact, let's just turn the HUD off. So I just want to get a bit of speed up. And I'm going to put the brake handle back in the lap position. And when you're learning, I'd suggest you leave it there. Really, you should keep it in the release position, or running if it's got one. Running and release are subtly different, but let's just leave that for now. Alright, so we've gotten up to a bit over 25 mile an hour. So let's throttle off now. Now let's say I want to slow down but not stop. So I'll go into service and back to lap. And you can see that's put a bit of pressure in the brake cylinder. We've gone up to 20 and we are slowing down now. But we're not actually stopping yet. We will if I leave it. And when we get back down, we're on our way down to 20. I want to do 20. So just before we get there, I release. And our brake pressure is going back down to 0. Now in reality it takes a little while at the back of the train. Probably in that time frame, the application's just starting. And now I've told it to release it. So, you know, lots of quick applies and removes can get you in a little bit of trouble. But in the game, it doesn't really matter that much. You can just do what I just did. Alright then, so now let's say I actually want to stop. So I'll go back into the service position, and what I'll do is I'll take about 20 pounds out, and that'll be enough to make us stop. Now you'll notice that another light came on there called suppression. In these particular trains, that stops the safety system braking you. So it means that it's indicated you're in control. Alright, that's a really simple one for this kind of train. But why don't we look at some other kinds of brakes as well? So we'll be back in just a moment with another train. So then, we're back in Sunnyside Yard. I can't say Sunnyside. We're back in Sunnyside Yard, and this is an Acela on the Amtrak network. Let's jump in the cab. Now, this brake handle is a little bit different. You'll notice it's got release, minimum, suppression, and full service. Let's not worry about the others. Suppression and full service and minimum, they're all just variations of apply. Notice this one doesn't have lap though. So this is one of those ones with the clever little valve that automatically does the lap for you. Right now we're in minimum, which means the lowest level of braking that the train can actually do. So if we look at our brake needles, remember the red needle? Guess what? It's a red needle again. I'm not going to tell you this is universally the same across all trains because it's not. But a lot of the time, the red needle's the one you want. And in this case, we're looking at 20 pounds in the brake cylinder from our minimum application. The other one, the EQ reservoir, it's sitting at 100 pounds. Let's release the brakes and see what happens. So I've put that back to the release position down there. And let's go back in. Okay, the red needle's gone to 0 and the equalizing, the white needle, has gone up to 110. So it's the left-hand white needle I should point out for you. Alright, so we're rolling again. So let's just apply minimum again and see what happens. There we go, straight up to 20 pounds, and we took 10 pounds out of the equalising. Let me zoom in again, just enough so you can see both. So if I go up again, and every time I move the handle away from me, the brake pressure goes up a little bit. This is probably the easiest kind of brake to deal with in the game. And you notice that suppression light, it came back on at about the same place, 90 pounds on the equalising reservoir. Alright, so we're now in full service, so this is as much braking as this one will actually do, unless you go into emergency, which applies everything. And similarly, as I reduce the handle back towards me, see what's happening on the brake cylinder? It's dropping too. Drops down to that minimum point where it can't give you any less. Alright, let's go for a quick drive. Off we go. Let's give it some oomph. Technical term that. Oomph. Basically it releases all the angry little kittens out of their cage and they jump into their treadmills and start running around to power your train. Now being in an Acela, we're going to get up to 25 miles a lot quicker. Alright, let's just cut the power off there. Now, same thing as before, I just want to slow down, I don't want to stop. So I want to bring it back to 20 mile an hour. So I'm just going to go into minimum, and we've got 20 pounds on the brake cylinder, and you can see that our speed's already starting to drop. So as we get near to 20, I'll release, because remember it takes a little while for these things to happen. There you go, the red needle's gone down to 0 on the locomotive. Because the Acela works the way it does, it's probably already released on the back, unlike the other train, it's a bit quicker. Now, what if that wasn't enough? So let's accelerate a bit. Let's get some more speed going. Of course, you just give it full speed, don't you? It's a simple demonstration. It's all good. Alright then, let's cut the power off again. Now let's go to minimum, and you go, you know what? It's not slowing me down enough. Let's give it some more. See how it's coming down much faster now? And then I can release again. But let's say I just realized that that signal was red and I wanted to stop. Let's go straight to emergency. Chances are you're going to slide straight through it anyway, because you know it's steel wheels on steel track. But what that did was that applied all the brakes it could, all at once. So, will emergency get you out of trouble? Yeah, sometimes, but not always. And not all trains are as simple to release as this one, where you just go back into the release position, but it'll do for now. Let's keep things simple. Okay, let's have a look at another kind of brake now, and this time we're not going to go to New York. Welcome to the British Rail 101, which has got another kind of vacuum brake. Let's jump in the cab and have a bit of a look. So this is our brake handle. It's a lapped vacuum brake, so it's a bit like the lapped air brake. Works pretty much the same way. If you go into the release range, it starts releasing the brakes. If I put it further into the release range, it releases them more quickly. The same thing happens when you go the other way. So when you go into the apply range, you start to apply the brakes slowly. The further you go round, the quicker you apply the brakes. So it's not the more you apply them, it's the quicker you apply them. So how do you juggle that? It's actually not too different. Let's go for a cruise. I've got some speed on, let's release the brakes. Now this train, once you've actually released them, keep the handle in lap. So it's good practice on all of the trains to work that way. It's not totally prototypical on most trains. It actually is on this one. Just want to build up a little bit of speed. I hope that's not a red signal for us. This one's a little bit more complex because you're changing gears all the time. So I'll build up a little bit of speed and then I'll show you the brakes. Alright, that'll do. Now with this one, when you're idling, you always put it in fourth gear. Alright, so we're doing 25 miles an hour. And let's say I want to bring it down to 20. So I've just taken a bit of vacuum out and you can see we're slowing down. Alright, it's time to release that. Do a quick release on it and then back to lap. We're actually going uphill at the moment, so we'll keep slowing down. Let's accelerate again. So with that, I destroyed a little bit of vacuum and we slowed down. So if you're going down a hill, you use that to maintain your speed. So you apply a little bit and then back into lap, just like we did. Now when you want to stop the train, it's actually not that different. So you apply a little bit and back into lap. If you're not stopping fast enough, apply a little bit more and back into lap. And there we go, we're coming to a stop. And still, if you're not stopping quick enough, you can apply it all the way. In an emergency, you could just leave it there. Because by the time it gets down to 0, it's not going to do anything else. Alright, and releasing it is just as simple. So we just go back round to the release position again. And if we can release it a little bit, and you see the needles going up slowly, or we can release it a lot and it goes up more quickly. And then, yep, you got it. Back to lap. And now we're going backwards, so I'll just apply a little bit just to stop that roll. That'll be enough. Alright, so you can see they're all pretty much the same. Now there's one more kind of brake I want to show you, because this one is just a little bit different. We're back in New York again. You're getting a theme here. Maybe I like this city. Don't know. Anyway, we're back in New York, and this is the M7 on the Long Island Railroad. Now I want to show you this one because a lot of commuter trains work this way. Well, hang on. Where's the brake handle? Oh no, someone's stolen it. Does it belong there? No, that's a cup holder. What we've got here is a thing called the master controller. Now, it's got a lot of different names, ranging from master controller to the throttle, to the speed handle, to the combined throttle and brake, to the grip it and rip it stick. Lots of different things, but basically it's got a braking range where it's applying the brake more and more until you get up to emergency and then it's all over, Jack. Or it's coasting, which means it's not applying brakes and it's not accelerating. Or it's applying power and it's going to make the train move. So let's get it moving. And we'll do the usual thing. We'll get it up to about 30 mile an hour or so. I'm completely ignoring the HUD. The only reason I've got it on at all is because I need the little dot to move the handle. I normally use my rail driver for this, but I'll just show you what I'm doing. So let me put it into coast now. So we're not braking and we're not powering, we're just in the middle of the range. Now let's say I wanted to slow down to about 25 mile an hour. So I could put a little bit of brake on and it'll start me slowing down. Now it's actually using electric brakes at the moment. Now if I want to slow down a bit faster, I just apply some more. But I can also just take that back off again and go back to minimum and it'll just hold me. Or I can go back to coast where I'm not applying brakes and I'm not powering. If I want to stop, I just apply enough brake to get the job done, which usually 85–90% will be fine. Still comfortable for your passengers. Alrighty, that's this one. Let's have a look at one of the British trains that works similarly, and I'll show you what I mean, how they're actually the same. Okay, this time we've got the mighty Jubilee, the 6P. Let's jump in here. This one's going to be just a tiny bit more complex because we've actually got two valves to deal with. Well, it's kind of three, but don't worry about the third one for now. In this one, we've got the large ejector, which is used to create vacuum quickly. We've got the small ejector, which is used to create vacuum slowly. And we've got a vacuum gauge up there, which currently shows us with no vacuum at all. Now, interestingly, that means the brakes are on. So it's the opposite way round to the gauges on the air brakes. When there is no vacuum, the brakes are on. They're held on by springs. Alright, so if we take this handle and we put it to the release position, and we'll open the large ejector valve just to make this quick, you can see that the vacuum's going up. And that means we're pulling a vacuum. You could say that we're sucking the air out of the system. It's kind of right. It's good enough. Alright, once we've got that 21 pounds of vacuum, sorry, it's not 21 pounds of vacuum, what am I saying? It's 21 inches of mercury. What does that really mean? I don't know. Just remember, 21's your thing. Alright, now we can close the large ejector and we'll compare what's happening up there to the handle. So right now we're on 0. G'day fireman, we're not going to go anywhere for a little while, don't worry about shoveling too hard. Let's put the handle on just a little bit, near enough to 10%. Now what happened up there? The vacuum's dropped a little bit, which means the brakes will be thinking about coming on, but they're probably not quite coming on yet, not very hard. So let's bring it up to near enough to 25. We've dropped quite a lot of vacuum now, so at this point you're starting to have quite an impression on the train and you will certainly be slowing down. And you'll notice how it gets to a point and it stops. There we go, just above 10. And if we took this to say, 80% will do, we're effectively destroyed the vacuum. Now this one, you remember I said there's another valve? That's this one. This is the steam brake. So this steam brake valve only applies the brakes on the locomotive. This is the one doing the train. And if we go to a full application, we destroy the vacuum completely down to 0. Now, what happens if you don't have the large ejector open? Well, let's release the brakes and watch the thing. It still climbs, but it climbs quite slowly. And when you think about you're pumping a whole train, so you're trying to get all the air out of the braking system throughout the whole train, this is quite slow. So when you aren't using the brakes, you keep the large ejector closed. when you're applying the brakes, you want them to be closed, but when you release the brakes, you want to open it. So let's just open it so it goes up there. All right, we've got the full vacuum. So the brakes are off, we've released. So let's go for a bit of a drive. Ignore all the other things I'm doing. I just want to build some speed up. Now this train doesn't actually have a speedometer. Ooh, she's a bouncy one this morning. So we're going to guess on the speed, okay? Because I'm not turning on the HUD. Says he with the HUD on. Now I'm not turning on the HUD deliberately because I don't want you to be reliant on the HUD. The train tells you what's going on. If you want to know more about driving a steam engine properly, have a look at my steam engine tutorial. Just come outside and watch the speed up because frankly, they take a little while to speed up because they're steam engines. There's a reason they're gone. They're slow. Even the best ones were slow. And we can watch the cool monkey motion while we're waiting for it to happen. And then I'll show you what we do with the brakes. And you're going to think, hey, wow, that's just like the automatic lapping brake in the other train that we looked at. And you know what? It is on a simple level, just like the other one. Except the needle's backwards. Alright, we're probably getting enough speed now to do what I want to do. So let's jump back in the cab. And we will cut the power off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on just a little bit of brake. So we've gone to about 15%. And it'll go there and it'll hold. And you can see that we are starting to slow down. It's definitely having an effect. But it's not going to stop it. And if I decide, okay, I've slowed down enough, I can just release those brakes. Pressure slowly goes back up. But remember, if we really want this, then we have to open up the large ejector. Otherwise, you're still going to stop because it takes so long for the pressure to go up that the rest of the train's just going to pull you to a stop. So let's accelerate again. Let's just put the regulator on the roof. Now we can shut the large ejector again because it has pulled the pressure, or it's pulled the vacuum, so it's fine. I shouldn't keep saying pressure, it's wrong. And this time we actually want to stop. So if you watch videos about this vacuum brake, what you'll see is the drivers do this. And that brings the train to a gentle stop. But let's just keep it simple. Let's just put the brake on so that we can stop. And there we have it. We are stopped. So you can treat it that simply and you will actually be fine most of the time. So this brake, pretty much the same as the automatic lapping air brake from a player's perspective. Let's get out and have a look at another brake now. We're going to have a look at the British Rail 101 class. Now I just wanted to jump into the 323 as our last train, simply because while it's the same as the last one, kinda, it is a tiny bit different. So in this one, our combined power handle, which is down on the left down here, let me pop the HUD back on for a tick. This one, it has staged braking positions. So 1, 2, 3, and emergency or 4. So if we just put that into off, you can see it's releasing the brake. So that right hand white needle there. And then we put it into stage 1, it applies some pressure. Put it into stage 2, it applies some more. Put it into stage 3, it applies a little bit more. And if we put it into emergency, it applies the whole lot. So very, very similar in the way it works. Let's just turn the HUD off again because we're ignoring this. We're not loading passengers. And now I'll put it into the power. Funnily enough, it's got four notches of power as well. And away we go. So I'll just let it get up some speed. Do the usual deal. Alright, so if I go back into the off position, I'm now just coasting. So I'm not speeding up and I'm not slowing down, I'm just rolling. And if I go into the first position, it'll apply the brakes a little bit. You can see we're starting to slow down. I want to do 20 mile an hour. Just before we get there, I go back to the off position. So, same sort of deal. And then if I want to stop the train, I can just either leave it in 1 or I can pop it into 2 and stop a bit more quickly. Or 3 if I want to stop even more quickly. So, from a player's perspective, it's all pretty much exactly the same. And like I said at the start, you can treat this stuff really simply. Forget about the physics of it. Forget about what's actually happening in the train. Just think about what's happening on your handle versus what's happening to your brakes. So how hard are you braking? How hard are you not braking? How are you releasing? How are you applying? Go and practice with some trains. It's not hard to treat it in a simplistic way. If you want to do it prototypically and realistically, then you've got some learning to do, and the simulator supports you in operating the brakes in a prototypical way. If you're running a really difficult thing like getting a train down Cajon Pass, you actually have to operate them prototypically or you'll come off the tracks. Another one that's like that is the Rosalini. If you don't operate them prototypically, you're going to crash. So I'd steer clear from those while you're learning. Or maybe just drive uphill. Drive uphill's fine, no braking. Very easy. But anyway, treat it simply. Learn your way. When you're ready, if you're ever ready to take the next step away from arcade and go into simulation, then have a look at some of my other tutorials on braking. Chuck a question down in the comments if you want to know some more. And we can go from there. Anyway, let's get this train out of here. And that'll be pretty much all she wrote for today. So I hope this tutorial's been useful for you. It's been kind of fun to produce it. And yeah, let me know if you've got questions. You know the deal. See you later. Bye.